Welcome. Thank you for joining us on this Corona Healers Education and Solutions Summit. This is day 6. And yesterday we talked about the new stories, changing our stories and transforming our stories. And today we're going to be talking about the new game and transforming our game. And we are joined by Jean-François Noubel, who is a dear friend of mine and an expert on currencies. And he sent me this amazing paper by Bernard Leiter. It was an eye-opening paper. So I wanted to talk to JF about that so that we understand how to make our game more robust than what we have today, because we are all now sitting at home and wondering, what are we going to do next? For a lot of people, it is the question of how are you going to eat next? We need to figure out a solution around this very quickly. The transforming our game is part of that. I'll talk to JF about that, and then I'll talk to Nandhini and Arvin Paranjpe, because they are actually implementing a new game in an app. And it also ties in with what we were discussing yesterday about new stories. So it's about helping people tell the new story, and in the process, build up a new reputation, a reputation currency that would help us play a new game. So thank you so much, JF and Nandhini and Arvin, for being here with us. JF, let me start by asking you about Bernard Leiter. How do you know him, and a little bit about the paper you helped write?
Okay, we can definitely consider Bernard Leiter as one of the, if not the number one pioneer in understanding currencies and money on a broader spectrum. He spoke 5 languages fluently. He could write books in 5 different languages. A scholar, very, very high level of culture and education. Very generous man. I met him for the first time, I think, in 2004. He discovered my work. We met in the US when he lived in Boulder, Colorado, and we became very close friends. So every time I would go to this part of the world, or later when he came back to Belgium in Brussels, I would stay at his place. For the first time, he discovered my work on collective intelligence, and he became one of, if not the first, to understand the link between collective intelligence and how we design currencies. I remember doing a conference in Ottawa a year before to researchers in collective intelligence and currencies that they did not understand one single thing about the link. And Bernard did that. He really had this special mind. So he's written many books, maybe the most famous one called The Future of Money, where he really explains the cultural biases and political biases we have when we think of currencies and the conditioning we have and all the belief system and all those things. And he's written many papers, and some of them I helped him. I did a little bit of peer reading, and that paper you mentioned speaks about the relationship between efficiency and resilience.
Right. So he shows that when we just look for efficiency, say by reducing a single number called cost, then we tend to go to a game that's going to destroy ourselves, literally.
That paper we mentioned, he applied that specifically on currencies and saying we became super efficient by having one single currency. Just like if you have monoculture, you become efficient, and burn down the forest, kill all biodiversity, and have, one species of pigs or one kind of wheat, all these things. You become super efficient, but because you've killed all the diversity there. But on the other scale, you lost your resilience. Right. And so he shows that you got 2 ends of the spectrum. On the one hand, you may have lots and lots and lots of diversity. For instance, in a company, diversity of profiles. In an ecosystem, diversity of species and harvests and crops, like a whole diversity of different types of corns and wheat and all those things. If you have too much diversity, you will lose efficiency. Now, if you want to go to the other end through efficiency, then you just burn down the forest and have one monoculture with one species, one kind of cattle, whatever, you have efficiency, but you've completely lost your resilience. And so nature has found a way to kind of optimize the middle way, have enough diversity, maybe not too much. So first he took this work based on biology and ecology about efficiency and resilience, and then applied that to the monetary systems and saying, okay, we have a super, super, super efficient monetary system, but we just have one. Just like if humanity raised only pigs for meat or only one kind of wheat for making bread, you have nothing else. You can imagine the catastrophe we would expose ourselves to if we did that. But we do the same thing with money. We have one currency system. It doesn't matter whether we call it dollars or euros or anything else. It has no resilience at all. So one single change like a coronavirus, for instance, or anything
Right.
else,
Right.
toxic bonds, whatever. And then you may have the whole thing collapse because it has absolutely no resilience.
Right.
And where our research work really matched collective intelligence on my side and his work on currency, the work on collective intelligence shows that pyramidal collective intelligence,
Mhm.
pyramidal structures that prevail today, centralized governments, top-down structures,
Right.
command and control, doesn't matter whether we talk about a company or an army or an administration, a government, a religion, they all
Right.
work in a top-down way with a few
Right.
people making decisions at the top and with a scarce currency system, a one single scarce currency, making everyone fight to get the scarce money for a salary, for a wage.
Mhm.
Well, when you have this kind of system, by their own DNA, they seek efficiency. They always want to become efficient. Because you want to save money, you will burn down the forest and make
Mhm.
soy. Because you also want the chains of command to become efficient, you need the same kind of people. They need to think the same way. They need to obey to a
Right.
certain social order to have unified people who think the same way, who look in the same direction, have not too much freedom in their minds.
Right.
You have to kill social diversity. You have to kill production diversity. So pyramidal collective intelligence by design always aims to kill diversity. We really have to understand that because we keep our time asking or begging pyramidal collective intelligent organizations to do things that they cannot do because of their design. They will always want to have more efficiency at the cost of resilience.
Right.
So you see how those things match together.
Right. Right. And then he also pointed out that all these alternate currencies that we're flourishing in the world, and that they are growing exponentially. So that is our innate intelligence building up the resilience that we need to get out of this mess that we are in, right?
Yes, and interesting to see that, for instance, after the 1929 crisis, just only in the US, you had thousands of local currencies. In the last crisis in Argentina, also, they created lots and lots of local currencies because when you have no more dollars or no more conventional money, what do? Well, you still need to engage economically with your peers. So most
Right.
people would start creating local currencies. And now in the US, they stopped that because of the New Deal. Roosevelt wrote the New Deal, and so they had to stop this. In the late 19th century, also in Europe, they created lots of local currencies as well because people needed them. At the time of top-down centralized governments, they did not like those things. They wanted to get control because if the people can control the currency, how can you control the people?
Right.
If you can find a way to make them dependent on the one single currency controlled by a few, then you control everyone. They've also done that in African countries, invading all those countries in the colonies.
Mhm.
The British and the Belgium and the French people, they really applied that for populations that had not used currencies or not used those kinds of currencies, the scarce
Right.
currencies. They may have their own currencies, but in a different way. So they killed all this to make a one single efficient top-down currency system. And look how we work today. We have one single model controlled by a few. We have no voice, it has no democracy at all. And in the
Right.
name of democracy, we impose that single game to the rest of the world. No freedom. I cannot ever say we live in democracies if we have to play one single imposed game by a few. Opaque. You don't know
Right.
about the rules. You don't make any decisions. You don't contribute to anything. You just have the right to have more depth and more depth and more depth. And there we go. So yes, we have now the technical possibilities, the technical infrastructures that we can use. People didn't have that many possibilities, technical infrastructures to do those things in the past. So they could
Right.
only do small local things. But now today, we can do those things with distributed apps on our smartphones and on the internet.
Right. Thank you so much. That leads us into what Nandhini and Arvin have been working on. We are used to having alternate currencies like, say, mileage on United. You earn miles. The company rewards you for taking flights on United, so for being a good consumer. So it is still in the current system of consumption. You can then translate that into dollars and consume some more, fly some more. What Arvin and Nandhini have been working on is a reputation currency, a currency system in which you reward people for doing the right thing, for regenerating forests. Arvin and Nandhini, can you please tell us a little bit more about United in Heart, how you came up with this, and what are you planning to do with your app?
We are creating an app, and that app has this concept of the enviros. And enviros are like frequent flyer points for environmentalists. The idea is that environmentalism is not only pursuing food, carbon, and communication, which is a major aspect of our app, food, carbon, and communication goals, but it's also attaining environmental awareness and personal empowerment. We have these various resources on our app that are educational. And if people watch videos, and these are like YouTube videos, for instance, watch videos, read articles on our website or on our app or elsewhere, then they earn enviros. Also, if they check off that they completed an action item related to one of their 3 goals, food, carbon, and communication, then again, they also attain more enviros. And so the idea is that it's rewarding a certain kind of behavior, and it's leading people towards further awareness and empowerment. We'd like to make it redeemable and convertible to another currency, and that's something that you, Sailesh, are working on, of course, is this concept of Aquarius. We build out 2 milestones. If these 2 milestones are met, then the enviros become redeemable. One of those milestones is a successful launch of Aquarius, or another currency that we would probably agree on. And then the other milestone is more internal to us, which is a certain number of people reaching what we call badges. So once they reach those certain number of badges, then we have a network effect, and we're big enough to actually roll out something like a full-on system for conversion to another currency.
Right. Let me talk to JF about that. JF, the thought I had with the enviros and what Arvin and Nandhini are trying to do, that is specific to, say, environmental activism. Being able to give resources for creating food forests, educating people about environmentalism, showing them movies. So it basically helps people become more active and gives them feedback on how well they're doing and how much impact they've had. Then you can build this reputation. The enviros has become like a reputation currency for environmentalism. And then you can have reputation currency for other things like animal rights activism or social justice activism. You can create these reputation currencies. And then based on that, we can decide how much flows in Aquarius. Seeing these as multiple ways in which you build reputation so that it then regulates the flow of Aquarius, which is meant to be a universal basic income type of currency system. What do you think about that, connecting it this way?
Well, first, let's not forget that conventional money does not reward anything about what you do for improving the systems in which we live. You can really see it as a growth hormone. The only business models that we have with conventional money will reward you because you sell more, not because you do good. And no one really matters. As an information system, conventional money doesn't say anything about how you earned this money. You may have earned it because of drugs, or as a con man or a businessman with no ethics. It doesn't matter. You just get the money. Let's remember that. And it tells us that, wow, we have no currencies, nothing that rewards someone that improves life, nothing about quality. If we think about wealth, of course, we need water and food and land and all those things. But the most important thing, the most sustainable thing as an earthling goes into the harmony of my relationships with my peers. I can do nothing if I don't have a harmonious relationship with my peers. And that leads to the question of reputation. I have nothing to look at this except oral tradition. You know, I can talk about your reputation, Silas. You can talk about mine. We can have dinners and talk about people, which we usually do. But we don't have much ideas about reputation. Some people do, celebrities, because of the good they did. I feel very happy about that. But so many people do amazing things, and the system will not support them at all. Building forests, for helping kids, for doing education, for healthcare, holding space for others, for gifting people with their time, whatever. But the system will not reward them. Actually, would even take resources from them rather than providing them with resources. So now time has come to invent new currency systems that kind of complete the buy and sell thing, which we'll need to do anyway. But we need now to go into a broader understanding that transcends and includes the old one. Yes, we still need to buy and sell things. We can do that. But now we need multiple currencies to build your reputation. For instance, we all belong here to the vegan community. I definitely want to participate, give my time and share and build a thriving economy with vegan people because I embrace the same values. In order to know where the flows of action, attention, and all these things can go, we can only do that with a reputation because I need to identify people I have never met, maybe in some other parts of the world or even in my own neighborhood, but
Right.
I can't see them unless I know their reputation. So we need to build those digital profiles and reputation, not based on a top-down thing like a university that will, from a centralized perspective, reward you with a diploma. So we go into a centralized one-way top-down reputation system, but we can move into peer-to-peer reputation. That means what happens between us and how do we build reputation together? So reputation currencies, we definitely need them. And we need currencies that reward you for improving life in whatever way that improves the resilience of the system as well.
Right.
We don't have those reputations. And now we cannot go to the next phase of humanity if we don't invent them. We absolutely need them as part of the requirements for building the next world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. We see the impact of just focusing on efficiency with what is going on in the US, with the state governors all bidding against each other for the few ventilators that are coming out of factories. And they realize that they are bidding up the price. And of course, the factories who are manufacturing ventilators, this is the system they are in. They're saying we have to give it to the highest bidder. Otherwise, how do you decide? Suddenly, we are seeing the free market economy becoming more socialist. People are saying we need to get together and not outbid each other. People who are building the ventilators, I don't think they're building it for money. They shouldn't be building it for money. They should be building it to help people. We have all these resources available for us to help each other get through this mess that we are in, that is caused by eating animals. Just to make that point very clear.
Yes.
We need to stop that and figure out a better way in which we are giving more resources in the hands of people who have better reputations.
Yes, and we can also talk about the masculine and the feminine. Conventional money, you need to earn it. You need the masculine mind to conquer that in a scarcity world. And scarcity has its good side as well. You know, it can make you better and improve your performance and all those things. So I don't say we don't need it. We need it, but it works when well balanced with the feminine. If you look, for instance, for companies and you look at the financial numbers after 1 year of a company, it only speaks about the masculine market shares and all the financial things and which new countries did you start your sales, and always about the masculine side. What did you conquer? What kind of flows did you create in this masculine world? It doesn't say anything about the feminine, like people taking care of one another. How did they support each other? What kind of time did they give to one another? When did they have to heal together to protect one another? You know, no human system can live without the whole feminine part, which remains hidden. And now we need to see current. And so the reputation currency and the currency is about taking care of the environment, of other people. We need to see them. It doesn't mean that you want to do something to become visible to the others. We have many ways to do this where you don't have to show up and say, look what I did, because that becomes, again, maybe something you want to conquer.
Right.
We have many ways to activate those currencies. If people consider that you've given them some good, lots of good things, they acknowledge you. And we can even call it an acknowledgement currency. And then you create an algorithm decided by common governance that will reward you because, yes, you may need to pay for a rent and maybe you need food and maybe you need to put your kids at school and all those things. So we definitely need to make some links between those different levels of wealth. Right. But today, the only way you will get money comes because you know how to conquer that. Not so good.
Right. All these ideas are now coming to the fore. We are going to look at them and figure out how to do this better going forward. Nandhini and Arvin, is there anything more you could tell us about the app that you're building? Because what you're doing is so in line with what we talked about yesterday, educating people, having them show movies and documentaries, having a way to measure that and then to build a reputation around that activity would be so useful. When do you plan to have some alpha testing, beta testing?
We're currently working on the app, but there's still a lot of questions that needs to be answered to make it more robust. We'll probably do a beta release end of July, around that time frame, and then with a lot of feedback from everybody else, we should be able to open it to a larger audience, hopefully in August. Our app doesn't address every single need, whatever JF said, but there are parts of it that identifies with what JF talked about, such as trying to recognize how someone helped someone. We have the app called Nextdoor where you can go and see people reaching out to other people who are in need of food or groceries. So the app in some ways helps communicate and coordinate everyday people to be able to make choices, food, carbon, communication choices. So in some ways, through our tree planting or food forests, we're trying to help solve the problem of world hunger.
Right.
Yeah, the documentary, which you're familiar with, Silation, JF, is explaining the amazing work that Silation and others on the front of, hey, veganism is the solution to the environmental problem. So it's the what and the why. Vegan reforestation to solve the climate emergency, and explains the climate emergency succinctly. There's this great transition right in front of us. Food, carbon, and communication being the drivers of this great transition, and therefore we hope that people come to our app and enter their goals around food, carbon, communication. And the carbon piece, we actually break into two pieces: renewable energy and tree planting in our food forests. When JF was talking about quality of life, it's how we're improving lives. You know, this is a mechanism for people to not only make donations to tree planting for food forests, but inspire others to do so and see how many people they inspired. Then they can see the effect their friends are having right on their app. Downstream, their friends inspire other friends, and so on and so forth. You can see that all in the app, how many people they inspired, and how many trees were planted as a result, and how many people were fed from those trees. There's a very human element to it. It's beautiful. We're really thrilled to be a part of that. And so we do think that it's not the whole spectrum as far as different aspects of reputation. Like you said, there could be another animal app that address that. This is more environmentalism, but it also does have that quality of life element that JF is referring to. Let's try to get that in there as well.
Right. So if you have anything that can be alpha tested during the Pinky Promise tour, let us know. Okay.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we'll be happy to use that.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, fantastic.
Because people are doing exactly what you were talking about during the Pinky Promise tour, and they could start playing with it and give you feedback on what works, what doesn't work.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
love
we'd like. Yes.
Love that. Okay, good. With that, are there questions from the audience?
Yes. The question is what documentary you just referred to?
Yeah, thanks, Becky. It's nice to see you. Well, it's called the United Heart Climate Solution. We will be retitling it to the United Heart Climate Solution Part 1. The documentary is the one that you saw in October. However, we've made improvements, and it also has about a minute and a half explanation of our app, actual screen views, and everything like that. So Part 1 explains the what and the why, vegan reforestation to solve climate change. Part 2 is going to explain who, how, and when. All of you on the call here are part of the who.
Right. We are it.
You're it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What we found when we showed the documentary to be a lot of common questions. Are you really going to convince every single last person on earth to go vegan? It's like, no, we're not. There's this concept of tipping points, and maybe you've heard of this concept of transaction costs. This economist named Ronald Coase, he won the Nobel Prize for basically 2 articles, and one was on transaction costs. He said that all property would be put to its highest use if it were not for transaction costs. And a lot of transaction costs that relates to information costs and monitoring and implementing the right solution in the right place at the right time. Land is being underused, is underutilized, and be put to a much better use if smarter choices on food. And so it's a transaction cost problem. And that needs to be communicated. So we have to get that information down into as short of a documentary as possible.
Right.
So that people can recognize that there's plenty of abundance. It's just an underuse problem, which is another thing that's very subtle. Overuse is in our face, right? So it's been in the English dictionary for 400 years. But underuse, it was added to the English dictionary about 10 to 15 years ago because it's invisible, so you can't see it. But that's the root problem with food, but it's also the root problem with water. Our app affiliate that does the tree planting, we do an amazing job of managing water runoff. Again, underuse. We simply are managing that water runoff. We are going to have a lot more water at our disposal.
Right.
So in that film, you showed the direct connection. You have an app and all of a sudden you see, oh, that saved trees. So you have that immediate thing. Is that the kind of thing you're thinking of?
Yeah, you're right. We do try to draw that out in the documentary that if we only use our land differently, we'd see a lot more trees, right? Believe it or not, we are underutilized. We have so much potential, each of us, our influence over our friends and family. If we simply are empowered with the right information, with the right documentaries and the right apps, we believe we can get them to be on board and help us. We have a coordinated effort to get a lot more out of each person, so to speak, not in terms of numbers, but quality.
Just giving feedback to people about what they've accomplished. That helps them go and do more of it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Nancy brings up, it sounds like you're proposing putting a value judgment on people's good actions. Will that lead to people judging each other's inherent value based on what they report they do and based on specific value assigned to those actions? I know JF would like to comment on that.
Do we need to assess each other's action? Of course we do. And we do that all the time. We assess what Shell or Exxon or the presidents do, public people, but also our neighbor. Of course we do assess that, and we need to do those things because actions matter. What I do has an impact on you and anyone else, my neighbor and some remote people I never know on the other side of the world. So of course, we need to become responsible. The question goes more into who can assess. If we give that to one single authority, like the church or politicians, well, we may put ourselves into big trouble because we give up our sovereignty to just a few. Now, if we go into peer-to-peer systems with clear rules, because the crowds can also decide to burn down witches and Jews and Indians and kill animals because they have a common belief that they have the right to kill and to enslave. I don't mean that the crowds have necessarily some wisdom. They can also behave very, very, very badly. So it goes more into what kind of rules do we have and what kind of games can I choose to play? Because right now I don't have the right to choose any game. I have to play one financial game. If I want to engage as a human being in the human world, I have to play the financial game just by earning money and spending money. That means I play a specific game and I have no choice at all. So do we need to see our actions? Yes. Now, do I need everyone to know what kind of actions did I do? Maybe not. I can just decide to remain anonymous. I can also act invisibly, but maybe my peers may want to acknowledge me, rating or something, without connecting it to what did I do exactly. We also see some new websites like Patreon, for instance, where I can just rely on the gift economy. So people who want to gift me for whatever reason, not necessarily connected to what I did yesterday or last month, they can gift me with some conventional money, and they can even remain anonymous if they want to gift me anonymously as well. So we have many ways to adapt. So maybe some people want other people to see their actions, and maybe for a good reason. For instance, people working in a hospital or in a healthcare system, yes, we need to see what they did, of course. Or schools, we need to see what they've accomplished. And maybe for other people, for other reasons, they don't want public visibility, and they may choose a different way to do their actions and get rewarded anonymously. And also, it doesn't mean we need to correlate an input and an output, like, oh, I planted 100 trees, that means I have this kind of reward, otherwise we get back into the market economy, which we can do as well. I don't say we should not do that. But I may have also the right to say, well, I just want to do my good deeds and because I like it. And some people will acknowledge me, maybe they don't even want to see their names appear. And I don't need the world to know what I did. And I still get supported because I need community support. If the community wants me to continue to do good things, they need to support me in one way or another. So we always need some level of visibility, no matter what. And we can formalize that into information systems that can work on a broader scale than just my immediate physical surrounding, which we need to do. Because what I do here in this place of the part of the world has an impact on you on the other part of the world.
Thank you. Did either of you want to talk about that? Nancy has a little bit further questions on the topic, but I don't want to go on if you have something to say on that further.
I second most of JF's thoughts, really. In a certain way, when someone does good or made a change or caused something positive happen, then they feel empowered and they feel like it made a difference. So it's also that concept of what I do actually helps people and makes a difference in people's lives. I don't see it as putting a value on someone's action. It's more personal empowerment. It kind of alludes a little bit to developing that reputation that Sailesh had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I would say that it's an opt-in. You know, for those that don't wish to play, the hope is that there's multiple front doors. And this is one entry point. And if someone is a staunch anti-environmentalist, there's another entry point and another. This is one way that it can attract, hopefully, the good in people that want to work on these particular environmental constructive action movements or initiatives. But there are other things they can work on if they wish.
You may have addressed some of these, but I want to read it to make sure, see if you have any other comments. People could feel a sense of selfless action for good because that's who we are. Assessing our good actions is a different category than the actions of corporations based on greed. Our good actions should be separate from having the basic necessities of food, shelter, water, safety, and freedom. It sounds like a utopia with a big brother watching you from Orwell's 1984. It's very important to share good actions to inspire each other to do good and to provide avenues to do good.
Right, yeah. That's what JF and Nandhini and Arvin are talking about. Giving people avenues to do good and making that visible and giving feedback on what that good really did. Even foundations that give money to do good want to see the impact of their actions too. So this is just making it much more democratic than just a foundation that can do it.
Democratic and distributed, because you see in the case of Big Brother, you have a super centralized state with Big Brother watching you. So only the Big Brother has the full power of life and death on you. So I don't think we can compare that with the peer-to-peer distributed systems, which also you can choose different games. You know, maybe I want to play the vegan game. Maybe another person wants to play more like the ecological tree game or the elderly games. You have more, you know, we have different kind of sensitivities, and it doesn't mean we have to play on the whole thing. And also, we absolutely want to decorrelate your income with your actions. If you say the good actions give you that kind of income, then we enter into another kind of society based on utilitarianism. That means if you don't prove yourself useful, then your worthiness of living goes away, which I think also leads to terrible ideologies. If a being exists on Earth, then this being exists and shouldn't have to earn a living that becomes extremely violent. A homeless person not doing any productive kind of work on society, that this person should not earn a living. Why would we say things like that? And what do we exactly know about the good and bad and all those things? So again, when we go into a peer-to-peer feedback, like, hey, Sailesh, you've done something so great for me. I feel so grateful for you. And I express my gratefulness to you, just that. I don't even need to say why, but I want to acknowledge you. And maybe lots of people want to acknowledge you because you've done great things for them. Just that. You build a reputation, just reputation. We don't even need to attach that to a revenue model. I believe we all need a universal income, which I don't even want to name a basic income. Why do we remain scarce by basic, you know?
Right. You got it.
You know, like survival kind of thing. But what about having an income? And then if people want to gift you with things, let them do it. It doesn't have to become a very complex thing, like how many trees did you plant? How many people did you heal? How many good words did you tell to this lady? It doesn't work this way.
Beautiful.
So I have a question from the QA box from Miles. He says, do we not need nations to accept the app? I'm in Canada and we have our own Bank of Canada. Are you approaching them or others?
Can we convert it to Canadian dollars, for instance? And right now, enviros are very made up. so they're non-redeemable at first. Someday, perhaps they'll be redeemable, and if so, it'll be only with a partner affiliate organization that agrees to take it for their currency, and that may very well be Sailesh Rao and Aquarius. It's not clear whether that would ever be redeemable to an actual Canadian dollar.
Right.
Well, we're partnering with donation platform that should be able to handle most of the currencies. We are not really talking to specific banks per se. As long as this platform is able to handle different currencies, then we should be okay.
I think we've crossed the line of asking permission to nation states. They apply extreme violence to people. And now they've come to the point where they create desperate actions. I think the violence on people will increase and increase in the next years. And we see that kind of everywhere. Because when you can't argue anymore with someone and you become so desperate, you don't play the conversation anymore. You just want to hit the person. You want to eliminate the person because you have no arguments anymore. Nation states will, I think, become more and more violent in the next few years. I don't think we have to ask permission anymore. We have to do those things so sexy that people will want just to go and play these new games. They will leave the old game. We don't need to ask them for permissions. Let's not do that.
I also see the nation states having second thoughts about the violent route. They are looking at the social structures. They are seeing that when the homeless person falls sick, then it's likely that the homeless person is going to infect the rich person also. We are all connected in this. And so I see the potential for nonviolent solutions bubbling up in this, where people begin to see your health is essential for my health and vice versa. That's what this virus is teaching us, that we are all in this together. I think we need to enable that line of thinking, which is really the intent of the summit. To enable that line of thinking to grow and to allow people to go through the fear zone to the learning zone, to eventually to the growing zone, to where we are actually becoming the imaginal cells of the butterfly. And so now we can think about how are we going to contribute in the butterfly. One of the guests is going to be Lauren Kuby, the vice mayor of Tempe. She brings a local government perspective because she's dealing with problems on the ground right here. It'll be very important to get her perspectives and how they are dealing with homelessness and issues like that. Any other questions?
There is one about applications. Airbnb rates each other.
Jeff would probably agree that these are also reputation currencies, right? Airbnb ratings, eBay ratings, these are all reputation currencies. But they are specific to a transactional environment. How well were you doing the transaction? Whereas what Nandhini and Arvin are talking about are more on the philanthropic environment, individuals, and getting feedback on your philanthropic actions.
We really gotten into an era with lots of reputation currencies on Facebook and number of stars you could give to a restaurant or a place in Google, except that the rules remain controlled by the few. Like, Google decide how you can rate a restaurant or a hospital or a doctor and all these things. Facebook decides how you can use your thumbs up and all these things. Yes, we have lots of reputation currencies and some of them work well, but we have no access to the code. The code itself remains controlled by a few. Mark Zuckerberg can decide exactly the kind of rules and algorithms we can use on Facebook. I have no voice, no vote, no participation in the software and all those things. So now we really need to enter into the world of distributed apps. That means apps that do not connect to a centralized server controlled by a few, but apps that work in a real peer-to-peer way. And that leads to a whole new world, yes.
Another question, is it legal to create your own currency in the United States?
What do you call as a currency? We are just recognizing that currency is also a game. National currencies are also games, and that we are free to create other games and play those games. Based on how many trees you planted or based on how many people you influenced, we are going to give you points. Essentially becomes like a reputation. We're not transacting anything here. Basically, we're donating to organizations, right?
The law has lots and lots of gray zones. So it will depend how the legislators will look at this. For instance, time banking. You have a currency called time, and you have the time banking created by Edgar Kahn in the US in places where people have no money, but they have time. So they can give time and you can account time in a mutual credit way. Like I give you, 2 hours of my time. So I got plus 2 hours and have minus 2 hours. And so we kind of, play with pluses and minuses about hours. And I can buy bread with the number of minutes. People have no dollars, but they have time. And the United States have decided that they would not put taxes on this because it enabled poor people to do things. And if you wanted to tax that, you would just kill an economy in which the nation state doesn't have to do anything because people now start to take care of themselves by themselves. And by the way, I think it will give very, very good arguments for many other currencies where the nation state will realize, oh, wow, if we wanted to do that for the elderly or for the poor people, for this neighborhood, we would have to invest millions of dollars and it would not even work. And now those people start doing things by themselves. Oh, scary, yes, because if they become too big, then we may have to strike back. But we haven't reached this point yet. Now, for other things like creating tokens, the legislator may see them as a utility, for instance, or they may just see them as a unit of account. So it just depends how you look at those things. I think it has lots of political questions in this, whether the authorities want to interpret what you do in one way or another. So we will always walk very tightrope there on those lines, yes.
Mm-hmm. So I have another question from the QA box. It says, from my observer's experience, the greatest burden to inhabit this new world we imagine regarding ecology, economy, etc., has to do with the habitual force that keeps us in familiar suffering and fear, even though we don't enjoy it. If you agree at some level, so I guess there's a question of do you agree at some level, then how do you or others deal with that in order to include and transcend?
Yeah, I agree, I'm sure. JF, would you like to address that?
We have lots of studies, by the way, to see how people would rather remain suffering in their small cage, even though they have the key of the door to escape from that cage, because the known suffering remains better than the unknown potentially suffering. So the idea of the unknown keeps people scared. However, the world evolves and evolution has happened for ages, even before humankind appeared on Earth. So it shows an interesting thing from a systemic perspective. You have kind of two moves. You have some pioneers, people who want to evolve, or fish who want to evolve and go on the land in this toxic atmosphere with gravity. And why those fish or this fish and not this one, that remains a complete mystery. But you have a tiny portion of evolutionary force in every species. And so some people will just go there because of their nature, because of their soul's journey, whatever. And most people, most of the population will not want to move. They want to remain to a specific place up to a certain point, because yes, up to a level of suffering, you will stay there. But after a certain level of suffering, you may want to prefer to jump in the unknown rather than staying there, because staying there, you know that you will die or you will suffer so much that you better jump in the unknowns. We all have our line there. Do we need suffering to evolve? It seems, looking in the past, that yes, the big moves, the big evolutions happened when people suffered so much that they had to jump in the unknown. But maybe we can evolve as a species and also build this culture and infrastructures where people learn that you can evolve without suffering or with a minimum amount of suffering. I think education can do a lot with this. If we have kids, we can also teach them that, because as kids, they do that all the time. They evolve, they go into a new world, a new paradigm, maybe 3 times a year. They do that. So why can't we continue to do these things as adults? I think it has a lot to do with how we design infrastructures and currency systems as well. I don't know what you guys think.
You're absolutely right. This is the way it has always happened. The explorers go try things out, and then as more and more people join the explorers, and the conservatives who are stuck behind will say, well, I think that is the new normal. So we better go over there. Very soon we're going to get there as more and more of us try this out.
Okay, that's wonderful. One more thing. What can we online and who's ready for this to happen today, what can we do to move this along?
Number one thing is education, education, education. Get more and more people to come and join us here. Talk to your neighbors, talk to everyone you know. That is the fundamental step that we all take in order to transform, is education.
I agree with Sailesh that it's a matter of education. There's a quote from Swami Vivekananda, which is an influential thinker about 125 years ago. And he said, ignorance is the cause of all suffering. It's this ignorance of not knowing the needs of others. That's where the education comes in. What are those other people's needs? What are the needs of the whole? How can we help them? It's an evolutionary process because it's really love. Right? Love is the capacity to see the needs of others and to act accordingly. And it's a process. It continues to grow as you let it unfold. Just continue that process. And that means both the internal. I see twin renaissances, right? I see the renaissance of the natural world and the renaissance of the spirit, to lean into both.
Right.
I just wanted to second what Silas said about education, education, education. This is the third time I've heard Jean-François and the second time that I've heard Arvin and Nandhini speak. So I'm realizing just how indoctrinated I've been in the system that we're in. And I can feel myself kind of unraveling a little bit from that system each time I hear you guys talk about this and starting to resonate more. It's feeling more possible to me every time I hear it. So I think I need to just unhook myself from the system we're in, because we just get templated with a certain way of being, and it's hard to imagine that we can ever not have to be that. Okay, one more question in the QA box. It says, what might be the nation state and banking industry reaction if they realize they are losing their psychological hold on people's thinking and losing profit?
Right. We don't know, right? I mean, what could the reaction be? JF was talking about more and more violence, and I'm hoping that, there'll be less and less violence. We'll see how it goes. They're going to see it in the stock market plummeting, in the GDP numbers going down. They're going to see all that. Then I don't know what their reaction will be. They may make up numbers. Who knows?
I'm also guessing that one of the factors in that is going to be how many of us decide to participate in the new games,
right.
And how quickly we begin to do that. And what the impact of that is going to be, whether that will end up with more violence or less. Having more people involved more quickly is going to be better for us if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't need to go in the streets to protest. We can do the most civil disobedience at home. Becoming vegan, just that. Most people understand that just as a diet thing. They don't understand that this represents the most political act one can make. You support rewiring the world, stopping the carbon emission economy, compassion, public health, all these political things by just stopping to eat animal product and exploiting them. Who looks at you when you do that? So the more we just say stop this lifestyle, we don't even need to go in the streets and protest, just become the next world. Such a powerful political act. Today, I don't know any more powerful political act stopping eating meat and becoming vegan today.
Thank you, JF. That was beautiful. And on that note, I want to say thank you to you and Arvin and Nandhini for joining us today. So tomorrow we are going to be talking to Keegan Kuhn and Alex Lockwood about the animal agriculture industry and how it is the root cause of all these pandemics. So they are doing a documentary on that. So join us again tomorrow, same time, 1 o'clock Pacific time. And I look forward to seeing you all.
Thanks for having us.
Journey.
Thank you.